Welcome to Performance Issues, the final lesson of SEP 14, Maintain and Troubleshoot. In this video, I'll talk about how you can assess SEP performance using semantics sizing and scalability recommendations. It's a good idea to do this periodically to ensure SEP is protecting the environment from new threats. Then we'll spend some time covering best practices for the SEPM and SEP client. In particular, how to optimize performance. It's always a happy medium making sure that you optimize protection, but at the same time, making sure that the endpoints in your environment have optimal performance. Afterwards, we'll talk about third-party utilities like perfmon, SQL Profiler, procmon, Wireshark, and SymDiag, which you can use to identify the source of performance issues. Then at the end, we'll take a look at some case studies that will help recognize the action to take when troubleshooting performance issues. Let's get started. It's a good idea to plan the design of your semantic endpoint protection environment. Using the default settings may result in a successful installation, but it may not always be easy to manage or even be fully optimized. Consider the number of geographic locations within the organization. If the network that supports your business is small and located in one geographic location, you may need to install only one SEPM. But if your network is geographically dispersed, you may need to install additional management servers to optimize network bandwidth. This leads to the next question. Where will your SEPM and database be located? Do you have network bottlenecks? In remote locations with limited network connectivity, you can configure a group update provider to reduce HTTP traffic to the SEPM. Client locations is also important because that dictates the type of policies you deploy as well as the content distribution method. Location awareness is a great way to deploy multiple sets of policies, especially for users that are out on the road. Configuration settings can also affect the size and growth rate of the SEP database. Consider the number of clients and whether the clients are a workstation or server. The role of the endpoint will determine the protection technologies deployed as well as the security policies. You'll also want to take a look at the content update frequency. To minimize the use of network bandwidth, you can schedule when content updates run and enable download randomization. Another factor is log retention, which can increase the size of the database. Some organizations redirect logs to a syslog server or do periodic audits to keep the size down for the SEP database. Refer to the Connect article on SQL database planning and the semantic sizing and scalability best practices for more information. Although a test environment is unlikely to mirror performance problems, you can use it for testing changes to your production environment. For example, if you're planning a migration to a newer version of SEP, you can also deploy group structure and policy changes. It's a good idea to have your test environment mirror production and that it's virtual so that you can roll back tests easily. Performance issues typically fall into three categories: network, system, or product configuration. Network issues could be due to poor design or old hardware, or perhaps WAN/LAN bottlenecks, or an overloaded subnet. System problems could be due to insufficient RAM or disk space, an old or unpatched operating system, too much concurrent disk I/O, or contention with other resource-hungry products. Product configuration can also cause poor performance. Poorly designed policy scans, or communication settings with unbalanced resources and old product versions. Now that we've spent some time assessing the SEP environment and some issues that you might run into, let's take a look at Semantic Endpoint Protection Manager best practices. Semantic recommends checking SEPM server health regularly. You can schedule a server health report to run periodically. You can also configure a notification to highlight any underlying issues, for example, insufficient hard drive space or RAM, which may prevent the SEPM from functioning well. For more information, refer to the KB article on the screen. Database maintenance improves performance and ensures an optimal database structure, particularly in large environments. Truncating the logs and rebuilding the indexes results in a more efficient database. The default configuration of the SEPM is designed to minimize the memory and disk space footprint. In larger organizations that leverage multiple groups and replicate sites or even both, default settings may cause the system to underperform. If you see Java errors in the SCM server log, and when trying to launch the SEPM, it's possible that you need to review these settings. Refer to the KB on the screen for details regarding the default settings. To allocate more resources to Java, adjust the registry variables shown in the screenshot. Before you make necessary changes, stop the SEPM services. You will also need to edit the stsm.bat file as shown in the screenshot. For more detailed information, refer to the KB on the screen. To decrease the time that is required to distribute content distribution updates, do one or more of the following action items. Distribute the client load across multiple management servers. Multiple management servers are helpful for load balancing and client failover. Deploy group update providers to distribute content to clients. A group update provider downloads content updates from the management server and distributes the updates to itself and other clients. The advantage of a group update provider is that it conserves bandwidth by offloading processing power from the management server to the group update provider. You can also use alternative methods to distribute content, such as internal live update servers or third-party distribution tools. Slowness can be related to misconfigured replication. If you experience slow replication, consider whether you need to replicate all the data. Is content client packages and logs replicating, or just groups and policies? How frequently are you replicating? As in any replication environment, you want to set the interval so that overlapping replications are avoided. If replication is already running, it could cause performance degradation with the Semantic Endpoint Protection Manager. How fast is the network link? Is the database busy running a backup? Review the scalability and sizing documentation to ensure that the SEPM meets hardware requirements. In this section, we'll take a look at best practices for optimizing the Semantic Endpoint Protection Client. Scans are one of the best ways to check for sleeping threats, but they are resource hungry. Symantec recommends adjusting your scan settings to optimize the scan performance and prevent it from impacting the user. You can use scans that resume for computers on your network with large volumes. But be aware that if you suspect the computer to be infected, you should run a full scan until it scans the entire computer. Modify tuning to best application performance for on-demand and scheduled scans. When you configure a scan with this setting, scans can start, but they only run when the computer is idle. Adjust the file cache and network settings for AutoProtect. Allow all scans to skip trusted files. Insight can skip files that are trusted by Symantec and the Symantec community. Randomize scheduled scans. In virtual environments where multiple VMs are deployed, simultaneous scans can cause resource problems. You can randomize scans to limit the impact on your server. Use Shared Insight Cache in virtual environments. Shared Insight Cache eliminates the need to rescan files that SEP has already determined to be clean. It's a separate application that you can install on a server in a virtual environment. Note that a full scan is the only scan to check for memory, load points, and the registry. Symantec recommends to schedule a full scan during deployment. Once all endpoints are confirmed to be clean, you can adjust to an active scan. There are multiple methods to improve SEP when running in a virtualized environment. Migrating to the latest version of Semantic Endpoint Protection ensures that you have increased performance and security for virtual environments. Keep virtual clients in the same group to allow for proper configuration of virtual clients. The SEPM can identify the platform that virtual environments run on, including VMware vSphere, Hyper-V, and Citrix Zen desktops. Enable download randomization when retrieving content from the Symantec Endpoint Protection Manager or Live Update. For more information on this topic, see the KB on the screen. To confirm that the SEP firewall is blocking network traffic, create a rule that allows all network traffic through the firewall. If you resolve the application issue by adding this rule, it confirms that SEP's firewall configuration must be modified to allow the application's network traffic through. Be aware that creating the Allow All rule is a troubleshooting step and should not be considered a resolution to this issue. Leaving an Allow All rule in place permanently reduces the computer's security posture. After the Allow All rule is created, test the network application to confirm that it works. If the application works, this indicates that the existing firewall rule set is not configured to allow network traffic through. It will be necessary to create an additional firewall rule or modify an existing rule to allow the application's network traffic through SEP's firewall. An alternative method for troubleshooting firewall rules is to turn on logging. Move the client to a test group with a copy of the firewall policy. Enable TSC debug to profile firewall rule processing and reproduce the connectivity issue. Then review the debug.log to identify the offending rule in the output. Disable the rule in the firewall policy, and if it resolves the issue, apply changes to the production group. In this topic, we'll talk about how third-party utilities can be used to identify performance issues. You can use the Windows Task Manager to check what resources are running and how much memory and CPU the resources are using. Under the Performance tab, use Resource Monitor to learn more about CPU, memory, disk, and network activity. For more information on how to troubleshoot performance with Windows Task Manager, see the Microsoft article listed on the screen. Use Process Monitor to troubleshoot performance issues related to SEP scans. It can report if the system experiences degradation during def watch or full scans. You can also identify performance issues with AutoProtect. When using Process Monitor, modify the registry so that Process Monitor records AutoProtect events in the output. Note that def watch is an active scan that runs after new definitions are delivered, examining common load points in memory. Active scans quickly checks system memory and all common virus and security risk locations on the computer. The scan includes all processes that run in memory, important Windows registry files, and files like config.sys and windows.ini. It also includes some critical operating system folders. Create a baseline for SQL performance so that you can check the effects for any configuration changes made. SQL Server tracing is part of the SQL Server toolset and can be helpful for troubleshooting issues. It enables you to identify the source of deadlocks in SEPM logs, verifies SQL activities from third-party applications, and helps to troubleshoot general SQL performance issues. Use Windows Performance Monitor when SQL Server is causing a slow response with the Symantec Endpoint Protection Manager. It can also be used to view network-based shared insight cache statistics. Wireshark is a useful network troubleshooting tool. It displays information which helps to isolate degradation issues and pinpoints network problems. In the example on the screen, you can see that the client initiated a heartbeat in push mode. You can also see that ADM1 tries to connect to Serve1 several times and fails. The previous lessons showed how SymDiag can be used to run a health check on the system and used to run a threat analysis scan to see if the machine is infected. but can also be used to test product installation requirements. Remember that performance degradation can be a symptom of an underlying issue. In this final topic, we'll take a look at some case studies so that you can identify performance issues. For troubleshooting high bandwidth issues, it's essential to identify the source of the problem. Review the server activity, client server activity, and client activity logs in the SEPM. If you're unable to determine the origin of the problem, enable Apache, HTTP, and Tomcat logging to profile the type of requests from the client computers to the manager. You will also need to enable side-link logging on a small group of client computers and wait for the issue to occur. Gather all logs from the SEPM and clients for analysis, and then disable logging on the SEPM and clients. Note that you can use network throttling for performance issues during content distribution. Low disk space can have a variety of different causes on a SEPM, but you will see an impact in performance if your SEPM is running low on disk space. Note the definitions are much smaller in SEP 14, so you may not need to change the number of content revisions by the SEPM. Editing database retention settings means changing the log and backup settings in the SEPM database properties. Also make sure debug logging is turned off in Tomcat and archive old logs. You can also delete client packages that are no longer required and move the SEPM installation to a drive other than the OS partition. There are also utilities like windirstat, which gives a visual overview of what is taking up space on your drive. You can also run SIMDiag to see if your SEPM meets minimum system requirements. Before troubleshooting a disk space issue on a SEP client, it's important to know which drive is running low on disk space and which folder is using the highest amount of disk space on the drive. You can use windirstat to identify which part of the drive is using up space, and also run Windows Disk Cleanup and delete unused applications. The Symantec Endpoint Protection Client can also be moved to a drive other than the OS partition. If there's a large amount of items in the quarantine folder, delete and recreate it. Check to see if the logs or definitions folder is an excessive size. Note that the definitions folder has a much smaller footprint with SEP 14. For more information, refer to the KB on the screen. There are several reasons why you may see poor database performance on a SEPM. If the SEPM database is loaded on a dynamic virtual disk or suffering I/O concurrence with another I/O-intensive process, you'll see reduced database performance. Other reasons can be a poorly configured database maintenance routine. It could be the SQL or SEPM server has hardware not scaled for the amount of managed clients, or a slow network link. Transaction logging could increase if you configure the SQL recovery model full instead of simple. Another cause is the SEPM log tables are frequently switching due to too many events being generated or uploaded. For more information, refer to the KB on the screen. In this lesson, you learned about measuring performance. In addition, you learned about optimizing client and management performance. Finally, you learned about common client performance issues. For more information about the topics discussed in this lesson, refer to the resources listed on this and the following screen, and remember to frequently check the Symantec Support website. Thank you for watching this video.